In last video I talked about SCP Foundation. I went briefly over its in-universe role and basic designations of personnel, Foundation areas, and, well, just go and watch it. Now, onto the SCPs. From designation, SCP stands for Special Containment Procedure. The Foundation maintains an extensive database regarding anomalies requiring special containment procedures. The primary Foundation database contains summaries of such anomalies and emergency procedures for maintaining or re-establishing safe containment in case of containment breach or other event. Anomalies may take many forms: an object, an entity, a location, or a freestanding phenomenon. These anomalies are categorized into object classes and are contained, analyzed, and tested upon. In very few cases, actually eliminated.
Doctor, in here, you will find the clearances necessary to begin termination trials on SCP-096. The O5 Council has come to your side.
Do you mean I'm allowed to kill it?
You're allowed to try.
Object classes. There are 5 primary object classes: Safe, Euclid, Catcher, Tomiel, and Neutralized. The Safe class SCPs are anomalies that are easily and safely contained. This is often due to the fact that the Foundation has researched the SCP well enough that containment does not require significant resources, or that the anomaly requires a specific and conscious activation or trigger. Classifying an SCP as safe, however, does not mean that handling and activating it doesn't pose a threat.
2 bacteria walk into a bar. The bartender says, "We don't serve bacteria here." 1 bacteria says, "What do you mean? We work here, we're staff." Oh!
Euclid class SCPs require more resources to contain completely. Usually this is because the SCP is insufficiently understood or inherently unpredictable. Euclid is the object class which is the greatest of the scope. As a note, any SCP that's autonomous, sentient, or sapient is generally classified as Euclid due to the inherent unpredictability of an object that can act or think on its own. Keter class are difficult to contain reliably, with containment procedures often being extensive and complex. The Foundation often can't contain these SCPs well due to not having a solid understanding of the anomaly, or lacking the technology to properly contain and counter it. A Keter SCP does not mean the SCP is dangerous, it's just simply very difficult and costly to contain. Tomiel class SCPs are anomalies that Foundation specifically uses to contain other SCPs. Even the mere existence of this object class is classified at the highest levels of the Foundation, and current status of the whole class are known to only a few Foundation personnel and O5 Council. Neutralized SCPs are anomalies those are no longer anomalous, either though having been intentionally or accidentally destroyed or disabled. After the 5 main object classes, we have some additional ones: explained, esoteric, and decommissioned. Explained being SCPs those are fully understood. as esoteric SCPs are SCPs to which other designations just do not fit or not in their full context. And decommissioned class, which is no longer in use, served a real-life tool to delete unwanted articles. The locked box test is an informational guideline used to determine an object's most appropriate object class. It goes like this. If you lock it in a box, leave it alone, and nothing bad will happen, then it's probably safe. If you lock it in a box, leave it alone, and you're not entirely sure what will happen, then it's probably Euclid. If you lock it in a box and leave it alone, and it easily escapes, it's probably Keter. And if it's a box, then it's probably Tomiel. Now I want to cover few SCPs just as an example. You can go by yourself and research others, there are countless of them. I'm just going to cover some of the more favorite ones. Is a reptile-like creature, object class Keter. This reptile must be destroyed as soon as possible. At this time, no means available are capable of destroying 682, only able to cause massive physical damage. 682 hates nearly everything, especially humans, and loves killing. Even though it can speak or operate hardware like keyboards or keypads, it cannot be negotiated with. 682 is contained in a 5x5x5 meter chamber with 25 cm reinforced acid-resistant steel plate and filled with a hydrochloric acid.
You wretched, conniving, ignorant, deceptive apes.
SCP-173. It's probably the most famous SCP. You probably have seen him, even though you were not that much familiar with SCP Foundation. Basic premise is that you have to contain eye contact with this creature at all time, or you will die. 173 can move in speeds that not even Foundation is able to detect, regularly dirties its containment. If not cleaned properly, ends up in deadly containment breach. SCP-096. Well, if you are not allowed to look away from 173, you are prohibited to look at 096. Otherwise, you guessed it, you will die. The Shy Guy is at all times contained in a 5x5x5 meter steel cube and prohibited to observe. He is around 3 meter tall humanoid creature that, if observed even from a photo or even from a pixel, will be triggered and enter a blood rage state, during which it will go after the person who observed it. And yet there is no way to kill 096. SCP-3008 is a large, old-fashioned IKEA, well, at least from the outside. From the inside is seemingly endless maze with ever-changing exits. 308 is occupied by SCP-3082 and survivors, seemingly from various dimensions as well as ours. And 302s are disproportionate beings that resemble to some extent IKEA workers, and they roam 308 unless provoked, and they're extremely hostile during night periods. As you can guess, well, there are countless other SCPs, of course. If you found this video, then probably you have some other SCPs videos in your recommended as well. This is the way I learned about the SCP Foundation, and I also really recommend to give it a look to SCP Wiki, the official website of Foundation. I also want to quickly mention that only very few people watch my channel at this moment, so if you end up liking my video or other videos channeling my content, You could support me by giving me a subscribe, like, and share to tell a friend. Goodbye.